Today on CityCast Denver. We're halfway through our summer book week, and today we're digging into a collection of short stories from writer Jenny Shank. She grew up in Denver in the 80s and 90s, during a time when many kids were bused across town as part of an effort to desegregate the public school system. Her new book, Mixed Company, explores the awkward, challenging, and often beautiful moments of human connection that she went through in that diverse environment. Our regular host, Bree Davies, also grew up in that era and shared many of those same complicated feelings and experiences. She spoke with Jenny Shank in November when Mixed Company came out. Last month, it won a Colorado Book Award for Best Fiction. Today is Wednesday, July 13th. I'm Lizzie Goldsmith, sitting in for Bree Davies, and this is CityCast Denver.
Jenny Shank, welcome to CityCast Denver.
Thank you for inviting me to CityCast Denver.
I feel like it's about time that we talk to each other and meet because we've had such interesting, similar trajectories in our Colorado lives, I feel like.
I agree.
Because I think you worked at the AV Club. When did you work at the AV Club for The Onion?
It was 2000 to 2006.
Yeah, right before they had a Denver office, and I worked there too.
Yeah.
So, small world. So we're here to talk about your book, Mixed Company, and it's a collection of short stories that you've written over time, but there's definitely a theme to this collection. Can you talk about that theme?
Well, the theme of Mixed Company came about accidentally because I guess I just always write stories about the same theme. But it's basically about people with differences of a number of kinds, different races, different native languages, different genders, different ages, things like that, trying to reach out to each other and connect in some way, whether that's your next door neighbor or the fellow students that you're bused to school with. I'm just interested in how people navigate those differences and don't just throw up their hands and walk away, but actually try to connect with each other.
So you just mentioned busing, and I really want to talk about it because one of your stories really reflected my own experience with busing to Denver schools. And the story centers on a white middle school student named Emily who's bused to a predominantly Black neighborhood. She's trying to navigate conversations and relationships with Black and brown kids at her school, but she just doesn't really have the framework to go about it. Why did you want to write about that particular experience?
So in that story, it's inspired by my time when I was bused from where I lived in Southeast Denver to Cole Middle School. The way busing worked for me, I was bused to a Latino neighborhood from 1st to 3rd grade. And then they were bused to my elementary school from 4th to 6th grade. And then 7th grade, I went to a school with a totally new group of students. So I kind of portrayed in Emily that she lost half her friends in that transition, and she was trying to make a new friend, but it's kind of hard when you live on opposite sides of the city. And so she wasn't really sure how to go about it. She tried to befriend her locker partner because they set up locker partnerships with people on different sides of town. And her locker partner thinks she's kind of goofy, I think. But eventually she comes to admire Emily's artistic skills.
Yeah, oh my gosh, I'm just having so many thoughts about my locker partner and who I was paired with. And we couldn't have been more different. You know, I was a white alternative girl that looked like Courtney Love. And my partner, Elizabeth, was this really amazing Chicana girl from El Paso, Texas, who was just the coolest person I'd ever met. But I was I wasn't even in her orbit, you know? And I loved that about Emily and Erica's relationship was Emily was trying and Erica was kind of yeah, whatever, welcome to school. But it was, I don't know, it was so real.
The second day of school, I decided to speak to Erica at our locker during a passing period. She already looked like a high schooler, wearing white K-Swiss sneakers with tight acid-wash jeans that showed off her high butt. Her hair was slicked back, and there were 2 little curls plastered to the side of her face with a product I learned was called Ultra Sheen hairdressing when I saw a jar of it left out in the locker room after gym class, open and glistening next to a rat tail comb. So, I said to Erica, shifting in my keds, you got art 8th period with Ms. Umber, right? I figured this was a safe topic. Obviously, she said. Your name's Emily? Yeah, I nodded, eager to make a friend. She crossed her arms over her chest and stared at me until I dropped my eyes. Is your mom black? She asked. No, I said. Is your dad black? She persisted. No. She gave me a good long look. You've got the biggest lips for a white person I've ever seen. Then she shut the locker and walked off. There were so few white kids that light-skinned people were assumed a mix of something unless proven otherwise. I ducked into the bathroom to study my lips before the bell rang. There is no ugly like middle school ugly. My features looked like they were fighting for control of my face, each of them trying to spread out and amass greater territory. My hair was kinked out and my lips were naturally full, but when you added braces and trumpet lessons that left the insides of them cut and swollen, that was a recipe for freak.
We've talked about it a little bit, but there's a couple stories in this collection that really deal with race. And I wonder, you're a white woman writing about race in 2021. And it is from the perspective of white folks. Why did you want to share that perspective or write from that place now?
I think I've been writing about race my whole writing career because of the way I grew up. I was bused all over the place, starting when I was 6 years old. That's what was interesting about busing in Denver, because I think those kind of programs in a lot of places, they take children from the less affluent neighborhood and they bus them to the more affluent neighborhood and say, okay, you can benefit from our resources here. But that puts the people that are being bused in sort of a guest position. But in Denver, we were mixed around. We went both ways. And so I was a guest in other people's neighborhoods. And so when I went to Cheltenham Elementary, which was by the Old Mile High Stadium, it was a school that had a curriculum put in place during the Chicano rights movement, really. We had Aztec murals on the walls. We had a lot of stuff that was done in Spanish. You know, we had a mercado for Cinco de Mayo, and I had native teachers who told me like stories about haunted pueblos that I still remember to this day. And that was my first time I heard a ghost story. It was from my classmates. I heard of La Llorona, which is a story I never heard of from my family. So I feel like I was immersed in other cultures from when I was young. But I think about what you're asking a lot because lately people have begun to realize how we lack stories from diverse perspectives, how they haven't been published and promoted and encouraged historically as much. And it's really, really important to put those forward as much as possible. And I try to do that too in my work as a teacher and a book reviewer and everything I do. I try to encourage people to read outside of their perspectives. There's this really great book of literary criticism called White Flights by Jess Rowe. And he observes that it seems like a lot of times white writers who are writing stuff in diverse settings have just eliminated all the non-white people in their stories, pretended that they are not there. And as a book reviewer, what I'm seeing is a lot of white writers setting stories in time periods and places where there are no people of color, so they just don't have to worry about it. And for me, so those are possible answers, I guess, but none of those is acceptable for me. I have to have everybody in my stories. That's why I called it mixed company. It's a mix of every kind of person, because that's what makes a story to me.
Are you still quoting 30-year-old movies? Have you said cool beans in the past 90 days? Do you think Discover isn't widely accepted? If this sounds like you, you're stuck in the past. Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. And every time you make a purchase with your card, you automatically earn cash back. Welcome to the now. It pays to Discover. Learn more at discover.com/credit card. Based on the February 2024 Nielsen report.
What you're describing in your own childhood, the experience of going to a school in a neighborhood with Chicano roots and learning about that. It's so different to me than the conversations that we often hear about Colorado and Denver. It's so white here. It's so white. And I think that actually allows a lot of white folks to think that we don't have to talk about race and socioeconomics and these intersections. But you challenge that, I think, and you have those conversations with your characters. And I appreciate that in such an honest way to say, these are actual conversations we're having, especially among kids, you know? Like, I don't know. I went to Catholic school, kindergarten through 8th grade, and it was predominantly white. So when I went to public school for high school, it was like I was navigating a whole new social world and had no framework for it. And I saw that in so much of your characters.
For me, it was a different neighborhood every few years. So like I said, I went to that school that had kind of a Chicano rights curriculum. And then I went to 5 Points. It was amazing because it was when NWA and Public Enemy were popular, but they were not played anywhere on the radio in Denver. So I was getting this music from my classmates who had played in the hallway. And I was like, what is this? You know, I was just immersed in this culture. And so it seemed like every few years I switched what culture I was immersed in. And it was great because I just got all these different stories, really.
This is reminding me of all the recent hoopla over critical race theory. Like, you and me grew up with busing, and it gave us these experiences and exposure to different kinds of people. And the issue school boards are debating today is kind of the same. Which stories are our kids going to be exposed to? What do you think about that?
Stories are additive. They don't, like, telling an additional story does not subtract from the story that you like. It adds to it. It enhances it. And the more stories you can expose yourself to, the more rich your background and knowledge is going to be. And so that's what I felt like. I got an education when I went to the Denver Public Schools. That's what an education is. It's learning things you don't know that your family couldn't teach you, I think.
Yeah, and I think learning from our peers, you know? It's not just about going to school to learn from teachers. It's connecting with our peers and really learning about those differences in our families and how we grow up. And it is very apparent when we're shipped across town to another community and we don't really have a frame of reference or root in that community. We have to learn from each other. And that's why I think that's something that I think comes through in your stories. Again, even though they're fictional, I think they're a great introduction to some genuine Colorado experiences that might help folks understand our city and our state a little better.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Well, Jenny Shank, thank you for joining me today.
That was a great time, Bree. Thank you for talking to me about my book.
That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed the show, why not take a minute to tell a friend about us and rate the show wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back tomorrow morning with another great summer reading recommendation. And tell us what you're reading. Give us a call at 720-500-5418 and let us know. Talk to you tomorrow.